Yo, wrestling fans, what's going on? It is Friday, September 10th, 2021, and you are currently tuned into the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. This is the show that brings you 2 weekly recap reports on Mondays and Fridays. You got Monday's report, which is focused on AEW Rampage and NWA Power, and pretty much any other weekend events or pay-per-view shows that hit the market at the time. And Friday's report is the recap show for NXT TV and AEW Dynamite. This is a relatively new channel, and I'm doing my best to try and expand this channel as much as I possibly can. So if you like what you see and you want to stay posted for more future FSWR content, really important, make sure you hit the subscribe button and click that bell icon to stay updated on all future postings. Also, make sure you give this video a like, and most importantly, for any of you out there running a YouTube channel right now, you know what I'm talking about here. Comments are very crucial, probably the most important mechanism to really help in the algorithm. So do me a favor, whether it's about the shows, whether it's about some wrestling topic, if it's a personal story about walking your dog, bad breakup, maybe you saw someone get hit by a bus, I don't care. Whatever it is, just leave a comment about it down below. Shoot me an LA Knight promo. Maybe we can have someone in the comment section start a Let Me Talk to You series. In addition to all the verbiage I'm spewing out here, make sure you guys check out my article content that I post on the Chairshot website. That is www.chairshot.com. I post 4 articles each week on various wrestling topics, most of them opinion-based. And the topics range from various promotions from AEW, WWE, NXT, whatever is a hot button issue at the moment. If it's something that you're interested in and you want to kill some time while you're sitting at the bus stop or sitting on the can trying to pass the time or whatever is passing through your system at the current moment, I will always be sure to leave a link to my most recent opinion article in the description so you can click the link there and scroll through some of my other content. I think I'm up to about 8 or 9 articles by this point, so I'm relatively new to the site, but I'm trying to be consistent with all the content that I'm putting out. It's actually, I'm finding that it's a lot harder to come up with topics to talk about, or at least maybe not topics is the right word, but compelling content that people would actually want to read and find interest in. I mean, to say that there's a shortage of wrestling news would be inaccurate, but trying to find stuff to talk about that people would find compelling it's a lot more difficult than you think it is. Anyway, today's show, we're going to be focusing on NXT and AEW Dynamite from this past week. So if you've watched the show consistently, you know what you're in for. If you are new to the channel, strap in, mofos, because you're in for a hell of a ride here. Let's get into the content. So we dive right into things this week with Ember Moon versus Kaylee Ray. And I didn't really have a whole lot I wrote down about it. Yeah, they worked hard, didn't do anything offensively horrible. There were no Canadian destroyers off the top rope or no-sell super kick kip-up exchanges. Wink, wink. Yeah, it was pretty good. I wasn't a huge fan of the spot where Ember hoisted up Kaylee into a vertical suplex and just chucked her over the top rope to the mat. You want to talk about a good way to shatter your ankles. Match may have gone a little long for my liking, but they at least built up the action throughout to keep me mostly interested. And the finish was actually kind of clever too. They were doing some pin exchanges on the mat, and then Kaylee ended up lifting Ember into the gory bomb to basically pin her. And obviously Ray's going after the title, so she needed to go over. Ember, on the other hand, I really don't know what they're doing with her. By the way, I will leave a link to one of my Chairshot articles down below for you to check out. The topic was on NXT's roster, and had a very interesting theory about Ember Moon in that article, in terms of what I think her role will end up being in this new NXT era. So definitely give that a look if you have time. We had a goddamn horrible segment with all the women at Indy's bachelorette party. I can't even begin to describe this. Candice invited a bunch of girls to basically a dinner party, and I would like to believe that all of them were NXT talents, but the only 3 that I actually recognized off the top of my head were Casey, Kaden, and Mackenzie. The other girls, I had no idea who they were. They attempted stupid comedy. It was bad. The only thing I could think afterwards is, my God, they've got Casey Catanzaro involved with this trash now. Like, Casey could be a star for this company in like 5 minutes if they just pushed her. But no, gotta have her feed into this horrible comedy too. But the horrors continue because Candice and Indy decided to leave and go check out Dexter's bachelor party. And we'll talk about that later on because boy, do I have a thing or two to say about that segment. Carmelo Hayes versus Santos Escobar. Albeit for a match I didn't really care about when they set it up last week. I thought it was fine. Escobar pretty much bullied Hayes around for most of it. Hayes was a good underdog here. There wasn't anything in the match that I would say insulted me. There was the Boston Crab spot on the steel steps where I just kind of sat there cockeyed. Like, how exactly is that supposed to hurt anymore if this move was just applied on a ring mat? But Hayes made a fiery comeback at the end, ended up hitting Escobar with a springboard DDT on the ring apron, and, well, the segment wasn't all perfect, let me say that. They did this really bizarre finish. So the Legato lackeys take the ref on the apron, and while Carmelo's getting to his feet, he turns around, and the heel female muscle for the group, Elektra Lopez, picks up the babyface Carmelo and gives him a body slam on the mat. And this distraction allows for Escobar to take advantage and hit the Phantom Driver on Hayes to pin him. Yeah. Way to make Hayes look like a big deal there. Getting punked out by the female muscle for the heel faction. So, match was fine. Dumb finish. I still think they made a big mistake putting Hayes over Odyssey Jones in the tournament, but it's not to say Hayes doesn't have potential. I just saw more in Jones in terms of ability and charisma, but again, that's just me. We had the Creed brothers making their in-ring debut, looking mad. And, well, they just beat the shit out of 2 geeks, and it was pretty fucking awesome. They threw these 2 dorks around, they smashed them, they pounced them, and best of all, they looked mean while doing it. And it was great. Well, they're not Charlie Haas or Shelton Benjamin, but to quote Wade Barrett here, I think I found my new favorite tag team. And all of a sudden, I think I may have flipped a switch with the Diamond Mine. Whatever the fuck that original incarnation was, it went over like a fart in church, but you toss in 2 beefy-looking amateur athletes that just pound dudes every week, all of a sudden I'm intrigued. By the way, I skipped over this. Right before this match, William Regal had announced a 4-way to determine Joe's opponent for the NXT title next week. It's Ciampa, Knight, O'Reilly, and Dunn, which, isn't it kind of telegraphed who's going over there anyway? They've been teasing Joe and Dunn for what seemingly feels like months now. Whatever. Oh, yes, and for any of you that forgot, yes, Samoa Joe is the NXT champion. Probably wouldn't know it if you watched the show this week, considering that he never made any physical appearance, but, We had Ember Moon talking about having a terrible 3-month stretch, and Well, apparently she knows what to do now. For those of you saying leave WWE and go wrestle somewhere else, maybe not something that drastic. Although I would not blame Ember if she wanted that. Casey Catanzaro and Kaden Carter wrestled Io Shirai and Zoe Stark for the women's tag titles. This is another fun one. In fact, looking back on it, the women were really on point this week in their matches. Well, until we got to the Mei Ying thing. But, the action here was good. Both teams are essentially baby faces, or whatever you call Io. I guess she's a tweener, although I hate that term and wish people would stop using it. But, teams went back and forth. They had a couple tease moments with Casey and Kaden almost getting the upset win. They kept the story going with Zoe and Io not really being able to get on the same page and trying to work the match on their own. Ultimately, Io and Zoe retained after something. I'll be honest, I totally forgot to write down the finish. It doesn't matter. The whole tag partners that don't get along deal has really been done to death in pro wrestling over the years, but whereas when Russo booked it back in the day, the teams would get together, tease dissension almost immediately, and then break up a week later, and no one would care. The Io Zoe team actually does have a little more intrigue, obviously because they don't really like each other, and they're rarely ever going to get on the same page with one another, so, you pretty much come to expect that they're going to have miscommunication during the course of most of their matches. I guess the question is, when does the miscommunication cost them the belts? So, it's a cool idea. It's clear that the duo was put together just so they could eventually break up and feud, but, they've been a perfectly acceptable team. The matches are good. Zoe's improving really quickly. Io's great just being Io. So I have no issues with what they're doing. Anyway, after the match, Mandy's crew came out and jumped Casey and Kaden on the ramp. And as I predicted, last week after Mandy got her face smashed in by Sarai, she now has a face mask. And of course, had you missed last week's show, you'd have no idea why Mandy had a face protector on, but I digress. What are replays in the grand scheme of things? They don't matter. We had Kyle O'Reilly cutting a promo and being awkward. Then we had the segment. The Dexter Lumis Bachelor segment. I'm not going to describe every detail of this because I don't have 35 minutes to talk about it, but in short, this is a must-see if you did not watch the show. Even if you are not a fan of NXT, just for the sheer lunacy of the matter, you've got to watch this. Whether it's on Peacock, YouTube, wherever you can catch it, just go out of your way to find it. The cast consisted of Dexter Lumis, Johnny Gargano, Odyssey Jones, Drake Maverick, Cameron Grimes, and a zombie referee. And I'll admit, I did not get the whole ref deal, but it is what it is. But the crew could not have been more perfectly picked for this skit. I think it was last week I talked about like the Diamond Mine deal and like in what ideal world could you ever imagine Roderick Strong hanging out with the people that he's working with right now? This is the polar opposite. I can totally see a scenario where Lumis, Gargano, Jones, Maverick, Grimes, and this zombie referee would actually go out and have a beer after the show. So whoever put this crew together, you get 2 thumbs up because it was awesome. And the story here was that Grimes had paid for them to spend a day in Orlando doing activities. They did some go-kart riding, they threw some axes, they did trampoline jumping, and to cap it off, they played some laser tag. And it took me a while to get settled with this, but once we got to the axe part, I was totally sold. When the line came out, does anyone here have experience with an axe? And everyone slowly turns to Dexter, and the camera pans over, and he's just standing there confidently holding his hand up in confirmation. I mean, I'll admit this. It takes a lot for me to laugh uproariously about something in pro wrestling these days, especially in today's garbage era. This might have been the greatest thing I've seen in wrestling all year. Maybe not as great as the Walter Dragunov thing, but pretty close. If you ask me in December of this year, do you remember the Dexter Lumis Bachelor segment from NXT? I will not only remember that, but I will explicitly remember the question of, does anyone in this room have experience with an axe? And the camera pans over and Dexter's just standing there with his hand up saying, of course I do. And, well, the whole premise here was that Johnny still hated Dexter going in, but through this male bonding experience, it turns out that Dexter isn't a bad guy after all. He helped Johnny learn how to properly throw an axe. He helped him choke out all the geeks in the laser tag room so they could win. And by the end, they high-fived, everyone cheered. Candace and Johnny got on the same page with Indy and Dexter. They're all a big happy family now, and now the final step is to have the wedding. And if this crew does not play a significant role in the wedding angle next week, I will be very sad. Although there was one question that I did ask myself coming out of this. Where the fuck is Austin Theory? Stay posted. I mean, here's the thing. You talk about a faction that I actually would like to see in NXT going forward. Fuck the way. Give me Gargano, Loomis, Maverick, Jones, and Grimes and a 5-person faction with Candice and Indy as the eye candy. Call the group to the moon. I will watch NXT for the rest of the year if they book that group. I could just see Vince now. Oh, God damn it, pal. These guys are a ride together. Such good shit. Well, here's what I will conclude with. Whatever in the hell that attempt was at comedy with the indie dinner session early on, this was the polar opposite. This was the best example of so wretchedly terrible, it transcended terrible and became fantastic by comparison. I might go watch this again, just to relive the experience. Honestly, this might have been the damnedest thing I've seen in professional wrestling since the final deletion. I should not have liked it, but I did. Should have been the main event. Because unfortunately, they had to follow that with this Mei Ying squash deal. And all I can positively say about it is that it was short. We had an LA Knight skit driving in his luxury vehicle. Not even going to try to pretend I'm an expert on cars. But he hyped up his 4-way for next week, which it should be a hell of a match if they don't overcomplicate it. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see now, won't we, Brian? MSK versus Lorcan and Birch in the main event for the tag titles. Well, still think the Loomis Bachelor Party should have main evented, but this wasn't a bad match. They had a match. Most of it was just moves. Really didn't write a whole lot down there. MSK made a big comeback at the end, and they kept things real simple with the finish. MSK hit their finisher and basically won clean. I've already kind of said my piece about MSK. They're a perfectly fine tag team, but then the reality sets in that they're the champs, and you're like, man, this tag division sucks balls. But hey, I'll always give it this. They've had the belts for a while now. They're pushing them. They keep winning clean. Someone clearly likes the two if that's the case. I have no idea who you send after them to take the titles. Possibly the two lunkheads from the Diamond Mine once they get a little more established. And in a real bizarre way to close out the show, Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland beat the piss out of Lorcan and Birch and left them laying. So, guess they're not going with the War Games deal after all. If you're trying to analyze it in depth, yeah, of course it was right the fuck out of nowhere and done for the sake of a swerve. But, I've said since this group's in session that I really didn't buy them as a main event act. I really didn't like the idea that these four were the centerpiece for what they were building the show around. So, I mean, to be honest, I didn't have a problem with this. Now, do I buy Lorcan and Burch as a babyface tag team going forward? No. Honestly, call me crazy. I think this might have been done to write them off of TV. You know, they're kickstarting a new era next week with a new set of tapings. There's been a lot of talk about NXT cuts coming down the pike. You know, Lorcan and Burch are two older guys that kind of fit the mold of the generation Vince kind of wants to phase out. Don't be surprised if this was done to, you know, get these guys off of TV and write them out of the equation. Again, I have no proof that this is the plan. It's all speculation. But, I mean, the blueprints are there. Clean job, unceremoniously beat down afterwards, lack of any real potential direction following the attack. I mean, we'll see, but doesn't look too promising for these Lorcan and Burch fellas, I'll tell you that. I tell you what. You know, unless the idea is to send them over to wrestle in NXT UK, which could be another option. And I guess there's always the potential to send them up to the main roster, but God, do you think main roster WWE is going to know what to do with Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch? Good Lord. But I guess we will find out. I guess the other important thing to mention here, too, is this episode was basically the season finale of the old NXT that we've come to know and love. Because starting next week, they're pretty much revamping the show entirely. They got the new logo. Apparently, they're going to start leveling up on production value. They're going to start focusing the show on some of these newer signees and try to phase out some of the older guard. You know, whether or not that turns out in moderation is yet to be seen, but it's going to be a weird change. Like I said, I am not fully committed to everything yet. I've been consistent with watching NXT for a while now, and you know, I know a lot of fans have been turned off by the thought of what the show could possibly turn into. I'm at least going to stick it through till the end of the month to see where things line up. You know, just kind of let the chips fall where they are and see where we are progress-wise by the end of September. You know, if the show looks like it's not going in a promising direction, you know, I may end up finding something else to replace NXT to talk about. What that substitution would be, I really don't know, but you know, but I'm also pretty good at spotting the writing on the wall, and you know, while there's a lot to be skeptical about, you know, I don't want to immediately dismiss the show before it really has a chance to make an impression. They've got a stacked card for next week, so I don't know. I at least want to give it a go and see where things end up. But after that, it's up in the air. Alright, moving on with AEW Dynamite from September 8th, 2021. Kick things off with Dustin Rhodes and Malachi Black. By the way, we heard that Excalibur is getting married in a few days, hence his absence from the program this week. Think he'll get married with the mask on? Anyway, this was, okay. I don't know. I didn't hate it, but the ending in particular just felt a bit empty. You know, and I know this is coming from someone who constantly complains about there being way too many run-in angles and afterbirths for AEW matches, but it just felt really open-ended, you know, especially considering how they've been developing the story over the last few weeks. You know, Black hits Dustin with a spin kick, he pins him, and well, then he just leaves. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, now what? I mean, the action during the match was mostly good. Wasn't a big fan of the fucking Canadian Destroyer, but, you know, I've already been over that 1,000 times and how much I hate that move. There were some fairly overt messy spots from Dustin, which is, you know, to be expected given his age. There was a spot where Black got knocked into the ropes and Black kind of lashed his arms around the top, and I don't know, I guess Dustin was expecting him to like immediately spring off or something, because Dustin went down on the mat like he was trying for that snap power slam he usually does, but Black never charged at him, so it just made Dustin look like an idiot. But I don't know. I was kind of looking forward to this match in theory, but in execution, not all that great of a segment. So we'll see. Obviously they're eventually going to circle back around to Cody and Malachi's rematch. The road to getting there has been rather lackluster, but you can't win them all. After this, we had CM Punk come out for a promo, and, well, once again, wasn't all that captivated with the content. The delivery was good, but the material was just blah. And, I'm not even trying to be a hard ass about this, but the deal is we were promised from Punk's return promo on Rampage that he was going to incrementally talk about his story and he was going to reveal more detail about his 7-year absence from the ring, his decision to come back to wrestling, signing with AEW, blah, blah, blah. And I know people are going to sit there and say, well, actually, he already talked about that and stuff. And, talked about it where? Press conferences, YouTube shows, off-camera interviews, a.k.a. not the television program. I don't give a shit. How about talking about the material in front of the audiences that need to hear it? Talk about it on your premier TV shows that are going to help facilitate the growth of your stupid fucking organization going forward. Give your new reviewers some context about Punk's absence from the ring in the last 7 years. How many people that are new viewers, casual wrestling fans that don't know a whole lot about CM Punk, how many of them know that the dude left WWE and basically quit wrestling for 7 years? There's got to be a handful out there that don't know about that. But again, the presumption factor of AEW. Everybody already knows it, so you don't need to go out of your way to explain it. Maybe for your stupid niche audience it works, but how about for the new viewers? How about the people that aren't accustomed to watching your product every week? Maybe give them a hand? I don't know. Just would seem like a common business sense, but what do I know? I don't run a fucking company. So discounting my fury with how that was handled, Punk's basically asking who's in line for him next. Taz ended up interrupting Punk and basically answered for him. Punk told him to send all of his goons at him one by one. So there's your next Punk program. It's probably not what most people were expecting coming out of his feud with Darby, but I'm not going to oppose a CM Punk Power Hobbs or a CM Punk Ricky Starks program. Does it scream placeholder? Yeah, it kind of does, but, let's be frank here. We all knew this was going to happen. Punk was going to get his 5 minutes in the sun, and as soon as AEW got a hold of its newest toy, Punk was going to immediately blend in with the rest of the roster. And why are you surprised? We had a skit with Britt Baker and her crew and Ruby Soho. So? She is not quite Ruby So-So yet, but I'm sure that time will come. So obviously their next direction is Ruby Britt for the title. And, let's be honest, that's probably the best time for Britt to drop the title. Would Ruby have been my first choice? No, but she's the newest acquisition. Let's be frank, aside from a very, very select few, Ruby is probably the best female wrestler they have under contract right now. What's that really saying? So she ends up beating Britt for the belt. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Although this does call into question the whole legitimacy of their stupid ranking system if Ruby can just immediately get shoehorned into the title picture, having only won a single match and debuting less than 7 days ago. But again, I digress. We had a Powerhouse Hobbs Dante Martin match. Didn't really know what to expect going in, but it ended up being a pleasant surprise. I dig Hobbs' vibe, and Dante's definitely got something. Haven't really been able to pinpoint what it is, but there might be something there. They had a big guy, little guy match, and it was fun. Hobbs just beat on Dante for most of it. Dante made a valiant comeback. Hook. well, he was just Hook. There was one really cool spot in this match, and I don't think I've ever seen this counter before. It was really innovative. Dante goes for a suicide dive, and Hobbs not only catches Dante mid-dive, but he catches him to balance his feet in the ropes, and then he kind of lunges him headfirst into the post. And it didn't look reckless or anything, but it looked cool. Anyway, Dante ended up trying for the series of kicks, and Hobbs ended up basically catching him in a big spine buster to pin him. So, hey, they're pushing Hobbs. I don't know if he should be working long competitive matches, especially against smaller dudes, but, obviously they see something in Dante, so they didn't want to give him the jobber treatment here. I mean, I get it. All I'm saying is if Hobbs is going to be the focus, I would say make him the focus. Have him get in, get over his Goldberg squash deal, and get out. I mean, if you want to push Dante, that's cool, but, keep him separate. Because if you're going to push Hobbs too, this just ends up muddying the waters. Because then you're trying to get over two guys at once, and it ends up really doing a hindrance to both of them. So, yeah, if you're going to push both of these guys, they shouldn't be wrestling each other right now. We had Dan Lambert ranting in the skybox. He wanted someone to challenge Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. Apparently, Matt Hardy wants to shave Orange Cassidy's hair.
Whatever.
And apparently, Orange Cassidy's on the same page. And we had MJF come out for a promo. And he spent about 3 minutes doing what MJF does best, being a dick. And he eventually called out Brian Pillman's daughter in the front row. And this brought out Brian Pillman Jr. to, talk. So they shot the shit for a while. Pillman he held his own, but MJF quickly exposed him, which is not what you really want to have happen to your baby faces. Anyway, MJF called Pillman's mom out. Pillman tried to charge the ring, but Wardlow got in between them. MJF told Wardlow to hit the bricks and be of little assistance like he was at the pay-per-view. So jaw-jacking continues. Eventually, Pillman gives MJF a double takedown. They start wailing away. And, man, I really wanted to like this. They almost got it right. But there were some pretty big, dire missteps at the end there. The slow dissension of MJF and Wardlow was fine, but I really think they would have been better served to have the 2-on-1 beatdown. You have Griff Garrison run down and help Pillman even the odds, and then you just end it. The heat portion of this had basically already surpassed when MJF just ate Pillman's lunch on the stick. By that point, you didn't need to have Wardlow immediately lay out Garrison like a dork. The babyfaces should have come in, cleared the ring, and then used this to launch the program. But the way they did it, not only did Pillman get completely neutered on the mic, but then he and his partner got laid out in the process. So just really didn't do any favors for them here. Overall, though, the only thing I could think coming out of this was, really, this is what they have planned next for MJF? I don't know, man. I mean, I get they got a whole lot going on right now in the main event scene, so probably don't have a whole lot of options for MJF at the moment, but going from Chris Jericho to Brian Pillman seems like a massive downgrade for me. Speaking of Jericho, where the hell was he this week? So he goes over MJF at the pay-per-view, taps him out clean in the middle of the ring, makes him look like a damn fool, and 3 days later, they're back to spotlighting MJF again? So why did you put Jericho over? Telling you, man, for all the people out there that say AEW doesn't have booking problems and Tony Khan has a good map out of where he wants guys in particular programs, if this was carefully mapped out for MJF in any capacity, it sucks. Up next, we had Ruby Soho versus Jamie Hayter. I hardly even know her. Well, I will say this. I know we keep joking about the so-so deal, but I mean, would that not be a perfect way to describe this match? I mean, there's only so many ways you can regurgitate the same BS, but AEW's women's division has just been really exposed lately. I mean, if that casino battle royal at the pay-per-view didn't exploit just how bad things really were right now, I don't know what will. The match here was sloppy. Both girls really couldn't get on the same page with anything. Yeah, just not a good match. And a really, really bad way to kick off Ruby's debut match. I mean, here's the thing. Why not just put her in the ring with Thunder Rosa? I mean, they had a good exchange at the pay-per-view. Rosa was already featured in a skit later on the program. I mean, at least Ruby's debut match may have come across better if she was working with someone who was a solid worker, but I mean, no offense to Jamie Hayter, but she ain't really doing it. I mean, Ruby kicked Jamie in the face out of nowhere and pinned her. And they had a post-match deal with Riho and Chris Statlander running out to chase off Britt's group, probably to set up a 6-person on Rampage. Woohoo. We had FTR and Shawn Spears versus the Takeout Order. And that's exactly what I did during this match. Sorry, FTR. By the way, I know this is all probably leading to Bray Wyatt debuting as the leader of the Dark Order down the road. I don't care. Tully Blanchard did some promo stuff with Tony backstage. He requested Shawn Spears versus Darby Allin for next week. Why, I have no idea. We had some wackiness with the Varsity Blondes and the Acclaimed in the trainer's room. Not exactly sure how we got from Pillman and Garrison feuding with MJF and Wardlow to now feuding with Caster and whoever his other partner is. But, hey, on the other hand, it looks like Caster's anger management sessions went well. Lord knows his PR has been pretty bad lately. Up next, we had the Elite. I almost skipped ahead, but when I saw that Adam Cole had not come out with them, I knew that they were going to give him the grand entrance, so I was able to withhold my vomit for the first couple minutes until Cole came out. By the way, can the Bucks hire a fucking image consultant and go shopping for some decent clothes? Seriously. Anyway, well, Cole cut a very good promo. Got in Tony's face, basically told him that if he plowed his wife, he was going to beat his ass 6 ways from Sunday. And after that, they kicked Tony out of the ring. Kenny Omega got on the stick and did some verbiage. And this all led to Bryan Danielson interrupting and getting in Omega's face. So Omega tried to go for a cheap shot, but Danielson ducked and put him in the crossface. The Elite Goons all swarmed Danielson and started stomping a mud hole in him. And then a bunch of baby faces ran out and made the save. And by the time this was over, the two feuds that I expect coming out of this are Omega versus Danielson and Cole versus Shivani. Hey, maybe that's Cole's opponent for next week. I mean, they never did specify a name. Tony's needed an ass kicking for a long time on this show, so if Cole's the guy to give it to him, so be it. I will say, in terms of placement of this segment, I mean, if it wasn't going to close the show, I probably would have had this open the program. I mean, you got two major signees that he just brought in. They're the two big selling points and talking points coming out of the pay-per-view. You know, you're setting them up for some big programs down the road. Cramming them in the middle of the show just felt really odd and out of place. Just something to think about. And in the main event, Jon Moxley versus Minoru Suzuki. And for every person that knew the backstory between Moxley and Suzuki from New Japan, you pretty much had every reason to be emotionally invested in this. Of course, if you're a new fan or someone that's not keyed into the story between these two overseas, you have little to no knowledge about Minoru Suzuki and what makes him unique as a wrestler. Well, you probably thought this was just a match. And let's be frank, that's pretty much what it was. It was just a match. There was no big setup to this. There were no special promo packages to hype it out throughout the night. There were no incentives to really care about it, and pretty much reflected in the match. They did some stuff for a while. Most of it was during the commercial break. The stuff that they did when they were live was very uneventful. Did not feel as big as it probably should have given their history, their backstory, and their past matches. It also had every New Japan trope that makes it virtually impossible for me to enjoy that product like I should. Fake forearms, fake punches, fake clotheslines, terrible selling, you name it, they did it. Suzuki getting busted open over the eye gave the match a little more gravity toward the end, but of course, 60 seconds after he gets busted open, they go right to the finish, and Moxley hits Suzuki with a Death Rider and pins him. And by the way, when did Moxley's Death Rider just become a glorified butterfly suplex? I mean, you may as well just use the paradigm shift as a finisher, because at least a DDT looks more brutal than that fucking overhead suplex. But yeah, like I said, this just didn't work. It was a complete and total waste of a Minoru Suzuki match. Really did nothing for either guy except put over Moxley in his hometown, and quite frankly, they really didn't need Suzuki to do that. I'm still on record saying they probably should have done this match at the pay-per-view and scrapped the Kojima match, but, you know, of course, with the way this match was executed, maybe it really wouldn't have made a lick of difference either way. But much like I predicted with the pay-per-view, I'm sure everyone will be fapping over this and saying it was great. You know, how AEW went out of their way to give us one of the most memorable TV matches of the year, yada yada. No, you're wrong. It was just a match, and not a very good one at that. And if you don't like it, kick rocks. You know, overall, I think this episode of Dynamite really highlights another one of my articles I wrote for the Chairshot this week. And I'll leave a link to that down below for you as well to check out. The whole topic is about AEW's roster and, you know, the possible ways they can go about managing it. You know, now that the roster has reached about half the population of China, and then some. But one of the things I discussed in that article was the idea of, you know, either doing some kind of split roster or making certain programs and storylines exclusive to particular shows, you know, and that way you avoid traps like what happened this week, where it was evidently clear by the time the main event rolled around that they were really, really pressed for time. The show was rushed, and it was evident by watching the Moxley-Suzuki match. And the problem was they tried to cram in too much shit into one show, and it ended up hurting their time management. And everybody could see that, at least by the time the last 15 minutes rolled around. You know, and I can think of 100 ways they could have easily avoided that problem. First thing they could have done is cut that stupid Dark Order 6-man altogether. And that's 5 to 10 minutes right there they could have easily given to the main event. They could cut back on the backstage skits and spend more time in the ring. I mean, there's a laundry list of things they could have done differently. But the one thing the show did not need was having to rush Moxley versus Suzuki, because when you realized by bell time you had less than 15 minutes left in the show, you knew that you were not going to get the match that you really wanted. So, it's something that AEW needs to really address. And I'm telling you all, if you're a fan of this product, if you want this product to succeed, you need to be willing to call out these issues and address them publicly. This whole AEW honeymoon phase, teat-sucking love fest that these fans are riding on right now, it's a real detriment in the long run. I mean, look, it's cool if you want to support the product. And if you're passionate about this company, that's great. Because you should want this company to thrive. Because God knows WWE is ever going to give you anything remotely great in their product now. So, If you're a loyal professional wrestling fan that needs an alternative to what WWE is doing, AEW is your golden standard, and it should be. But you also need to understand that this company has a lot of issues that they need to address. Yes, you should want this company to thrive. I want this company to thrive, despite how my reports may come across. But we need to be willing to call out the bad shit when it happens. Because otherwise, the only thing we're doing is we're just feeding into the problem. And this company will never grow. It will never get better. What happens when pro wrestling companies get too big for their britches? Guys, if you liked what you saw this week, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you stay posted for all future FSWR content. In addition, I would appreciate it if you like the video and leave your thoughts and comments down below. I will be back on Monday for the next installment of the show. I just spit all over my mic. That was fucking disgusting. It's a good thing I'm behind a screen. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the closing recaps here. Yes, I will be back on Monday for the next installment where I will be talking about Rampage, NWA Power. I might have a news topic to cover because I don't think there are any wrestling events coming up this weekend that I have on my radar to talk about. So I might have some kind of closing thing that I'll talk about on the Monday show, but we'll see. I'll leave that one up in the air. Anyway, gone on long enough here, so thanks a bunch. Take care.